This will be a bit of a rough one in comparison to a lot of my character discussions because I decided this pretty short notice. Yesterday there was a released information, the official announcement of Heroes, the big crossover series by Hiro Mishima, and he's going to be crossing over his series, Rave Master, Fairy Tail, and Eden Zero. And I thought, well, who would be the perfect person really to commemorate that from the series as, all of these, because I already did August, who would be a really good, match to fit him from one of these other two. Obviously, Fairy Tail has, like I said, August. Eden Zero hasn't got to that kind of character yet, but Rave Master has Shakuma Raregroove, the grandfather of the main villain. He was from the Raregroove Kingdom, which was the opposing one to the main characters, this Kingdom of Symphonia, where he came from, at least bloodline-wise, and his father. But everything about this guy was very bad. I mean, what's funny is when you look at someone like August had a very unfortunate, beginning of his life, and he really just kind of, became down that, antagonist pathway while trying to support his father, whereas Shakuma really started a lot of things because he wanted to follow on the path to erase the world. He didn't like as they saw, the fake world that had been created thanks to the Endless, and he just did not give off any of that kind of sympathetic vibe that August did. I had a lot of sympathy for August because he wasn't doing stuff out of being good or evil. He was doing it purely out of loyalty and out of what he thought was good, what he thought was for the better of everyone, because the gaps between them is from their efforts. Lucia just wanted to return the world what he thought was correct, because the world that they were in was kind of like a cheated world, and the real one was just some desolate wasteland where practically no one was left alive. It was uninhabitable. And well, that was the original one, so let's go back to that one. And Zareth wanted to help people. He wanted to save the world. He wanted to stop Actologia, save humanity from what happened. And so, when you have all these things, it's hard to kind of, look at them and see, who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. It's no, not really. It's not actually hard. It's pretty quick and simple, at least in comparison. So, Shakuma, though, was a pretty interesting character because you had Haja, who was a very powerful sorcerer, and he, his whole thing with his Dark Brain is he had infinite mana. He was able to pretty much to cast any of his spells as many times as he wanted. And even with that, he wasn't as powerful as Shakuma. And I think they're a really good way to kind of really look at that is when you have, obviously, you have Zareth with Fairy Heart, but another series I thought was always really easy to compare them, or in this situation, was Merlin from Seven Deadly Sins, because her power is also that she has infinite magic. But then if you take stats into account, her power is not that high. It's the fact that she can use any of those spells that she has infinite amount of times. It's not like she could put infinite energy into one spell. It's more hey, I have 100 mana points, and this spell costs 5. I can use it up to 5. They could do a 1 cost, a 2 cost, and max power 5 points. But it's well, I can only do up to 5 points, where you can do that 5 points infinitely. You're not going to be able to well, I can make it 1,000,000 points. It's no, you can just infinitely cast it to what your output is. And that's what Haja was, and that's what Zareth seemed to have with Fairy Heart. It was just, he can use as many of his spells as much as he wanted, which obviously was a big thing for Zareth, because he was actually absurdly powerful, versus the other two, Haja and Merlin were strong, but their infinite magic is really what made them kind of in their position, where Zareth was just absurd by the start. And Shakuma had a lot of good spells, and also what's really funny is when some people have called August the Fairy Tail kind of ripoff of him, which I don't understand. I mean, I guess the really old wizard. I mean, even Hades doesn't look like him either. You can only really look at him as an old guy with a beard and a mustache. Their designs are very different, even in that. Both August and Hades are pretty big for their size. I think Hades is 6'3", and August is something 6'1" or something pretty big. They're both pretty muscular, whereas like Shakuma's very lengthy. You know, he's skinny. He's much more like a classical sorcerer, and you know, obviously a sharp like demonic person like teeth. He's got that really long, almost Fu Manchu style mustache, but you know, thick and waving like that. And when you saw like a lot of his spells, he had a lot of like more classical spells, like when they kind of like really first like have him introduced and you know are dealing with him. Obviously not like, oh, his first appearance. When you first really see what he's capable of, you have like a bunch of the people of Mildian, you know, all team up to kind of get away from him because they know how powerful he was. They're like, let's all group our magic together and cast a teleport spell. Teleporting is, you know, is extremely high level. It costs a lot of magic, but we can get, you know, pretty much right to Symphonia, and he won't be able to you know, deal with us. And they thought, because right when they did that, he just followed them. He just, all right, and teleports with them. It took pretty much no strain out of him. Dude's very, very, very powerful. And then, like, right when he's, you know, after that, followed up with, like, all right, I'm going to do a meteor shower. You know, drop some meteor shower on him. He can do, like, tsunamis and, you know, conjure lightning bolts. He had a lot up his sleeve that just had a much more simplistic style to him. He's not like August, where August was like, all right, let me throw in a bunch of weird spells and absolutely just break myself by having his main magic of, you know, instant learning and negation, so he gets to become immune to anything he figured out how to do, which he could do instantaneously as long as it wasn't within, you know, or originating from an item. But Shakuma actually ended up being part of the guy, like, he pretty much put a lot of the plot together. I mean, it's really weird because he was a very powerful guy, but his overall kind of like set in the series was bigger than what his display as like of importance was, because he ended up like really heavily like laying along the war between the Symphonia and the Raregroove kingdoms, and that obviously like leading up to events like the Overdrive. That's like, you know, literally both the two Gales fighting. The main character Haru ended up, you know, having to inherit the fight against the Raregroove Prince, who later became the leader of Demon Car as Lucia Raregroove. So you really couldn't have a lot of the story without him, and yet his character was, he really only had that presence of being a really powerful kind of person within Demon Card. You'd expect for him to be a lot bigger of a deal and to get a lot better of a treatment. I think it was just from the fact that, you know, even though he had a lot going on for backstory, he himself was kind of more of this, like, he was really cool in his display, but as like a person, he's just a jerk, and he's just like a really not nice guy. Like when he showed up and like got ready to attack Ellie and Haru, ended up destroying the grave for Sieg Hart, and that wasn't boding for anybody after that. Like, he didn't even care. He didn't even really care about like dealing with random members of you know, of the main cast. He's just like, hey, get out of my way, you guys are really starting to annoy me. I would have loved to see like what his full like output would be if he wasn't fighting against, you know, Ellie, who had Ethereon, you know, to pretty much dwarf what he had. But I don't know, design wise, definitely liked him. I like his overly long, you know, wizard style kind of beard and hair. His staff is extremely cool. I really like his staff, and that is definitely a follow up, because him and August both had fantastic staffs. Very simplistic, yet very cool. It wasn't like some crazy detailed, like a million things going on with it. Like, August's staff it's just like a big stick, and it's encroaching over this like black egg-like stone. Shakuma's, it's this nice kind of like question marky swirl, but with two more stacked on top of it to give it a unique design and tone. But other than that, like, I don't have as much to say about him, because like, as you can see, like the panels, I didn't have a lot to go off, because he's not, I don't know, the story nearly as much as someone like August, or like the Witch Queen. I already had a little bit of like issues with, but at least she got to have a little bit more of a setup beforehand of the fight, and then, you know, a nice spot after. Shakuma really, like, a majority of his panels are really just in that, like, hey, I'm following you guys and harassing you. Like, after that, it was like him getting the shit kicked out of him. But as I said, you know, tell me what you guys think in the comments. Well, I guess that's not as I said, as I usually say. And tell me how you think about it, because this is a good time. this is the best time, rather, to get people into any of the series. You read Fairy Tail or watched it, and now you should get into Eden Zero. This is more incentive. Or maybe you've read and watched Fairy Tail and you've done through Eden Zero, but you've never touched Rave Master. Maybe you've touched none of them. Maybe you've only read Rave Master. This is the time right now with Heroes announcement that will be the best to get people to get into all three of them. Maybe get into others, because I said in the video talking about the announcement for Heroes that it's not restricted just to those series, because it's not called Rave Master X Fairy Tail X Eden Zero. It's called Heroes. So Hiro Mashima could bring in other characters from his series. He could bring in other, like, he's got like Aki from Monster Soul. He could bring in characters from his one-shots. He could bring in characters from other series within the magazine. He could bring in like Meliodas and Shinra for all we know. We have no idea what could possibly like transpire from this. This could be like an ongoing thing within Shonen Magazine. I think that would be a great idea, to have some form of conjoined universe, an Elseworld where it's like, this is not connected to the main stories of each of the series. This is just a kind of like weird alternate universe where all of them are in the same one. And you don't have to worry about like, oh, how are we going to work all the character powers together? Because each series has different kind of styles. It's like, no one cares about that. We just want to see the cool interactions between each of them, and what fun kind of like fights and battles and interactions are going to have, and whether or not they're going to get along, and easy stuff like that. But other than that, like I said, comment below, thumbs up the video. I really appreciate if you prefer the like button and the subscribe button, and check out my other videos. But I appreciate everyone who's already subscribed, and I thank you all for listening. Bye.